Some fights are over before they even begin, not because of knockouts or submissions, but because of moments. Moments that told the truth before the official announcements. A slurred interview, a mysterious tweet, a cancelled press conference. In the fight game, everything can change in a second, and sometimes those seconds are caught on camera. These weren't rumors or guesses. These were crystal clear signs that something was seriously wrong. And while fans kept hoping, deep down, they already knew. These are the moments that made the world stop and ask, is this fight even going to happen? From surprise exits to painful injuries, here are the 10 exact moments we all knew these massive fights were doomed. 10th DJ's letter that killed the super fight Demetrius.
About to fight TJ Dillashaw, $2 million. That's what I want, Dana. There you have it or not. So obviously, like John Jones said, he would go up and fight Cain Velasquez.
Johnson versus TJ Dillashaw was supposed to be the biggest fight in the flyweight division. Fans were eager to see the dominant champion defend his belt against a former bantamweight title holder. But behind the scenes, things weren't so smooth. When Cody Garbrandt got injured, TJ offered to move down in weight to fight DJ. The UFC backed the idea and pushed hard, but DJ stayed quiet until he didn't. He wrote an open letter that made everything clear. In it, he laid out every issue he had with the UFC. He said he didn't trust that TJ would make weight. He didn't think the UFC would pay him fairly if the fight fell apart. And he accused the promotion of bullying him into accepting the match. That letter wasn't just a rejection, it was a warning. Fans read it and immediately knew the fight was finished. The tension was too high and DJ was too firm in his stance. What should have been a historic clash turned into a public standoff. And after that letter, no one expected it to happen. The fight died the moment DJ decided to speak his truth, and he did it for the whole world to see. 9. Brock Lesnar chose WWE over UFC. The setup was perfect.
UFC became the UFC heavyweight champion of the world. Their success.
Daniel Cormier had just become the UFC's first simultaneous light heavyweight and heavyweight champion. After his win, Brock Lesnar entered the octagon, shoved him, and the crowd went wild. It felt like a massive money fight was on the way. Lesnar even rejoined the USADA testing pool, making it seem official. But then, nothing. Weeks passed, and then months. No news, no updates. Then, in late 2018, the real truth came out. Lesnar had signed a new contract with WWE. Sure, the deal allowed him to fight in the UFC, but fans quickly realized what had happened. Brock had used the UFC hype to get a better wrestling deal. Quietly, Daniel Cormier had back surgery around the same time, which would have never happened if a mega fight was truly coming. When Dana White finally confirmed Brock had retired from MMA, no one was shocked. They already knew. The press, the push, the setup, it was all smoke. The WWE contract was the moment everyone realized the fight wasn't real. What looked like the next big heavyweight clash was just a bluff, and fans who had believed in it were left disappointed. 8. McGregor versus Chandler fell apart in plain sight.
Love how dangerous I am, because trust me, in the mindset I'm in, I'm really, really dangerous.
The fight between Conor McGregor and Michael Chandler was made official for UFC 303, but something always felt shaky. They had coached against each other on The Ultimate Fighter, and fans expected a quick turnaround for the fight. Instead, nearly a year passed with no date. Then finally, UFC 303 was announced. But things got weird fast. McGregor was seen partying, drinking, and doing everything except training. Still, some fans hoped he was just blowing off steam. Then, less than a month before the event, the Dublin press conference was suddenly cancelled, without a reason. That one move changed everything. Even loyal fans began to lose hope. Just 10 days later, it was revealed that McGregor had suffered a toe injury and pulled out of the fight. But in truth, the injury wasn't the biggest sign. It was the way things unfolded publicly. The silence, the canceled press event, the behavior. It all pointed to a fight that wasn't going to happen. McGregor had been out of the cage for years, and this was supposed to be his big return. But in the end, all fans got was another painful reminder that not every big fight becomes real. 7. Jon Jones wanted more than UFC offered.
To the finest, and they're such a great company, and just to be on the cover was just.
In 2020, the UFC world was buzzing with talk of Jon Jones moving up to heavyweight to fight Francis Ngannou. It was a dream matchup, two dangerous legends in one cage. But quickly, the dream started to fall apart. Jon wanted more money for taking the risk. Dana White didn't agree. Then Dana went public and claimed Jon wanted $30 million, the same amount boxer Deontay Wilder was paid. Jon responded on Twitter, calling Dana a liar. The back and forth exploded online. But for fans, that clip of Dana saying the number was the breaking point. That was when everyone knew the fight was off. The tension wasn't just between fighters, it was between fighter and boss. And when money becomes a fight of its own, swing the real fight never happens. Jon would later vacate his light heavyweight title and stay out of the cage for nearly 3 years. By the time he returned, Ngannou was gone. Fans kept hoping, but it was clear from the moment Dana spoke that this fight was finished. Sometimes, it's not about training or injuries, it's about contracts. And in this case, those numbers killed the most exciting heavyweight matchup fans ever imagined. 6th, Khabib versus Tony was cursed from the start.
I want to become greatest lightweight ever. I have to beat this guy. That's why I'm here.
Khabib Nurmagomedov versus Tony Ferguson had already failed to happen 4 times. Each time, something went wrong. But when it was announced again for April 2020, fans still hoped this would finally be the one. Then, the world changed. COVID-19 began spreading fast. By March, New York shut down large events. The UFC needed a new location. But something even worse happened. Russia banned international travel. Khabib had gone back home to finish his camp. And now, he couldn't leave. He went live on Instagram and told fans that no one could tell him where to go. The fight was stuck, and Khabib was stuck too. The next day, he pulled out. Soon after, Justin Gaethje was announced as the replacement. It wasn't just another cancellation. It felt like the final nail in the coffin. This fight was cursed. And now, with the pandemic shaking the world, there was no way it could go on. Khabib versus Tony was the fight fans dreamed of for years. But when lockdowns began, everyone knew it was over. It wasn't just bad luck this time, it was something bigger than the sport. And the one fight fans begged for would never happen again. 5. Max Holloway's interview changed everything.
Like that, so it's cool, it's exciting times that we live in, and I can't wait.
Now,
Max Holloway was supposed to defend his featherweight title against Brian Ortega. But days before the fight, he went on UFC Tonight for an interview, and from the very first moment, something felt wrong. His speech was slow and slurred. His face looked blank. Viewers immediately felt concerned. Michael Bisping, who was part of the show, even asked him if he was okay. He asked if Max had just woken up, or if he was exhausted from the weight cut. But the real fear started when that clip began to spread online. Fans everywhere agreed something was seriously wrong. By the next day, Max was in the hospital, and the fight was off. No one was surprised. Whatever had affected him that night clearly wasn't minor. Though he later made a full recovery and even returned to defeat Ortega months later, that one interview told everyone everything they needed to know. It wasn't just bad luck. It was a warning that could be seen from a mile away. And once you watched it, you couldn't unsee it. That one moment stands as the clearest sign that this fight was never going to happen. 4. Nate Diaz versus Dustin Poirier was never real.
Fight. We had some weird stuff going on. I would just plan on fighting in Madison Square Garden.
The moment Nate Diaz versus Dustin Poirier was announced, things felt off. Fans were excited, but something didn't add up. Nate didn't seem interested. He skipped press events and stayed silent. When he finally showed up, his body was there, but his heart wasn't. Then, Dana White dropped a surprise. Conor McGregor versus Khabib Nurmagomedov was happening. The moment the promo started playing, Nate stood up and walked out. After that, he tweeted something cryptic that showed his frustration. Moments later, he was seen outside the venue trashing the UFC and talking about Tyron Woodley instead. 2 months later, he and Poirier randomly claimed their fight would be for a new 165-pound title. Dana shut that down fast. Then, only weeks before the event, Poirier said Nate was impossible to deal with and that he needed hip surgery anyway. The fight was canceled, but fans had already moved on. Everyone had seen it coming. It wasn't one moment that doomed the fight. It was the entire way Nate acted from the beginning. It was never real. It was never going to happen. And deep down, fans knew it from the start. 3. Vanderlei Silva's knockout killed the hype.
Onde nós temos pro Brasil, para nossa cidade Curitiba.
Vanderlei Silva versus Chuck Liddell was the fight every MMA fan wanted. It was meant to be the biggest clash between two champions from rival promotions, Pride and UFC. Dana White even brought Silva into the octagon to announce the fight during UFC 61. The only condition was that Chuck had to beat Renato Babalu Sobral. Chuck won, so it seemed like the dream fight was locked in. But 2 weeks later, Silva entered Pride's heavyweight Grand Prix and faced Mirko Cro Cop. Midway through the fight, Silva was brutally knocked out. The hit was hard, and the moment he hit the ground, fans knew the truth. This fight with Chuck couldn't happen. Not now, maybe not ever. Nevada's commission wouldn't allow Silva to fight so soon after a knockout. On top of that, Silva's reputation took a serious hit. The magic was gone. Even though the fight finally happened over a year later, both fighters were past their prime. They had lost their belts, and the hype had faded. That knockout didn't just hurt Silva, it killed the most anticipated cross-promotion fight in MMA history before it even started. 2. Cain Velasquez told everyone he wasn't ready.
I can get you in touch with the right people and everything else. You just worry about getting your degree.
Cain Velasquez was set to rematch Fabricio Werdum in one of the most anticipated heavyweight fights in UFC history. Fans were excited to see Cain try to reclaim his title, but 9 days before the fight, Cain gave an interview that changed everything. He admitted that he couldn't stand for more than 10 minutes without pain. He also said he was already scheduled for back surgery right after the fight. That one interview was all it took for fans to start panicking. How could someone fight at the highest level when they couldn't even stand upright? The Nevada State Athletic Commission didn't ignore it either. They reviewed his condition again, and within days, the fight was canceled. Cain would go on to have the surgery, but the damage was already done. His own words had shut the door. If he had stayed quiet, maybe the fight would have moved forward. But once he said out loud that his body was broken, no one could pretend anymore. The truth was out. This wasn't a comeback story. It was a fighter admitting defeat before he even entered the cage. 1. Fedor's letter ended every UFC dream.
С которыми он собирается работать. Уважать бойцов.
Fedor Emelianenko was the one fighter UFC fans dreamed of seeing in the octagon. After Pride collapsed, the UFC tried for years to sign him, but no deal was ever made. Then, in 2008, Fedor released a public letter to Dana White. In it, he said he wanted to fight Randy Couture or Antonio Rodrigo Nogueira. But at the end of the letter, he wrote one sentence that killed every hope. He said he was under contract with M1 Global and would only fight in co-promoted events. That was it. UFC had never co-promoted with anyone and never planned to. Fans knew right then that the dream was over. That one line ended everything. No more speculation, no more fantasy matchups. It was the final word in a long, frustrating saga. The UFC and Fedor would never come to terms, and the biggest heavyweight fight of the era, Fedor vs. Couture, would stay a dream. For fans, it was heartbreaking, and it all ended with a letter that made the truth impossible to ignore.